So welcome back, everybody, to the podcast. Today I have a really special guest with me today. We have the amazing Dianna Dow. She is an award-winning productivity trainer, international speaker, and all-around badass. I can't wait to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming in. And I'm not sure where this conversation is going to go just yet, but I've had the pleasure of actually running multiple workshops with Dianna so far. And she knows her stuff, everybody. She's been a bit of a mentor to me as well in many different ways. So thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Amazing. So what got you into productivity training and what was your kind of stepping stones towards this pathway?
Yeah, I have a really non-conventional pathway. So if you had met me straight after school, I was studying medicine, planning on studying medicine and becoming a doctor. I was about 3 years down into that pathway until I decided that it just wasn't for me. And I think it was because I had the pleasure of being exposed to a corporate workspace really early. So I don't know if you've seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street.
Of course I have.
But think Wolf of Wall Street exactly as it was, all things included. That's pretty much where I was working.
Wait, so that actually exists?
It does exist. Well, not anymore post some laws changing around in Australia. But I was working there and, aside from all of the extracurricular activity involved in that, it really taught me a lot about time pressure, about money pressure, about optimizing processes, because that industry is so intense and everything just has to be perfect and run amazingly and optimized. So I was studying medicine, but I was thrown in this deep end here I became an operations manager very young at 21 years old. Wow. And all of a sudden I had to figure out how to make this business run optimally. So to circle back, that all basically came down not only to my own productivity, but the productivity of everyone in a business, the systems they were using to stay productive, and how to optimize that on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And I developed a bit of a knack for it. So while I was working there, I decided to start coaching, building my own business. So I have a business where I teach those skills to students and teachers and parents, as well as another business or another banner that I teach business owners and young entrepreneurs. And now we've got some exciting things going on here in Dubai after relocating. And yeah, I've just got a real passion for helping people do better and do more.
I would assume you'd be good with working under pressure then.
A little bit. I kind of thrive under pressure. Actually, it's the lack of pressure that sometimes bothers me.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's really, really cool. And when it comes to productivity, when you first started this journey, was it an easy thing for you to pick up? Were you always somewhat organized? Were you always productive? Or is it just something that you kind of had to force yourself into?
Yeah, look, I've always been the person that people call naturally smart. I didn't have to study all that much, but
I hate when people say that though. It's like you weren't even there for it.
Yeah, you weren't there. So people typically called me naturally smart growing up and going through high school. I was never the absolute top of my class, but I was consistently high. High grades.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Always got consistently high grades. So that probably gave me a bit of a complex. Actually, it wasn't necessarily that the results made me feel smart, but everyone telling me how smart I was made me feel smarter. And there's this funny thing, when you tell yourself you're smart, you do things that smart people do and you become smarter, right? So that's probably the first thing. I've naturally always had a knack for learning and picking things up in that way. But actually the second thing is not really having a fear of messing up. From a very young age, my mum always encouraged me to do anything that I wanted to do, try anything that I wanted to try, and then see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? And if another human could do it, so could I. Right? So while these things are seemingly unrelated, I grew up knowing that I was smart and I was capable. Right? So it meant that anything I wanted to pick up, I could and I would. So fast forward to now studying medicine, learning about the brain, physiology, how the brain and the body all works and how it all works together, I realized a lot of our emotions, a lot of our actions, a lot of everything we do day to day is just science. It's just biology. Right? So I started to learn about how the body and brain worked. And then I started to learn about how money and time and managing people and leading people worked. So then it was this perfect storm that helped me see that in the middle of it all was learning, lifelong learning more specifically, being productive with your time and resources, and just having a go at everything. And eventually you'll find something you're good at, or you will get good at something, because when you do it enough, you'll get there eventually. So for me, it was a perfect storm. It was medicine, it was work, it was my upbringing that just led me to say, I know how to achieve anything I want by just putting a set of steps in place and doing it and see what happens. And now I just teach other people to do the same.
It's so cool. You touched on a couple of really important topics there, where lifelong learning is just a pursuit of getting better, So I generally, as a kid, I hated learning because for me, it was associated to negativity. It was associated to school. It was associated to bullying. It was associated to all these things, right? So for me, I just didn't like learning. And as I got older and I started to realize, I actually like learning just the things that I enjoy. And that stayed with me for a little while. And then I eventually learned how to learn. And because I knew how to learn, learning became fun. Mm-hmm. So then learning anything is the pursuit of lifelong learning. And it means now that if I'm given a topic and I need to speak about it, I can speak about it like an expert in a week.
Yeah.
Which I never thought was possible for me. And the amount of things it's allowed me to do and continue to do, and I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future, but I assume it's going to continuously go up and up and up. But the things that happen, the opportunities that you create just by lifelong learning it's really, really important. And I think it's something that everybody should really, really attempt to get into.
Absolutely. I think lifelong learning is probably the single most valuable skill that you can 100%. Have, because anything you want to do, you can learn. If you want to go into sports, you can learn how to be a better athlete. If you want to go into music, you can learn how to be a better musician. So lifelong learning is, the root of all skills. But I think, like you said, we associate learning with school, or we associate learning with reading really heavy books or being lectured by someone. But learning comes in so many different formats, and it could be what you see, what you hear, what you read, what you do, who you hang out around. So, I mean, I know this is something we're both particularly passionate about, but how do you feel like I'm going to ask you a question now, but how do you feel like you've integrated learning into your everyday? So I'm not talking about, dedicating hours to reading or writing or memorizing something. Like, how do you think learning has impacted how you go about your day-to-day business?
I generally try to go to big events and seminars and things like these because I like the immersion that comes with learning from big events. But in my day-to-day life, I'm always using habits that I picked up from memory training. So whether it's even just before when we were recording some tips for social media, I use a memory palace. And that's something I never even thought was possible before. I'd have to be constantly just like looking at the list or something and being like, what's number one? What's number two? I've already forgotten. And I listen to podcasts when I'm driving, so I'm using memory palaces to store information as I'm driving. So I'm always learning something and recalling and retaining it. And it's become a habit for me. So now if I'm ever stuck on anything, I know that it's not me as a person that's fundamentally broken. It's just I need to learn something. Whereas before, I just thought I was stupid. I just thought some people knew these things and some people didn't. And I was the didn't.
That fixed mindset. Yeah.
I used to have a very fixed mindset with it. And now it's everything that you want is on the other side of a bit of information.
How good is that? And I think part of it is just finding what is the best way that you consume that information. And I think this is the biggest thing. It's because in school we were taught that, learning comes from being spoken at by a teacher or reading lots of books.
Yeah.
But the way that we learn can vary so much. So I'm more of a conversational learner. So I'll learn more from having a conversation with someone about a topic, being able to ask questions, being able to engage. That's my style of learning, which means my strategy for lifelong learning is to always be in a room with people that are smarter than me.
I love that.
It's like the old saying goes, if you're the smartest in the room, you're in the wrong
room. Yeah.
Right? I want to be the little fish. Like, that's why I've always forced myself to be in rooms that are much bigger than I am. When I had a $10,000 business, I'd be in the room with people had hundreds of thousands of dollars. When I got to $100,000 business, I'm in a room with people with million or multi-million dollar businesses. And that's how I kept those conversations going, because if you're learning from the people achieving what you want to achieve, then you're heading in the right direction.
I think Dubai helped me a lot with that.
Yeah.
Because when I was 22, I'd never met somebody that made $1 million or something like that. And now I've met multi-billionaires, and every second person you meet sometimes is a millionaire. You're like, oh, cool, this is great. This just puts me onto like I can do better and I can be better.
Yeah.
Always. And it's fantastic, I try not to overload myself with information. Whereas when I first started learning memory techniques, I thought I had to memorize everything anybody ever said. And that's okay. I was just learning the skill. Whenever you learn anything new, you overplay it. But now I do more of micro learning in a way that's deliberate and effective. So instead of attempting to memorize an entire book in a day or something like that, it's what are 3 to 5 tips that I can learn today that I can use and implement, and then actually ingrain into part of myself of who I am. And then learn more when I feel like I'm ready. So generally I'll be learning 1 to 5 things each day that I can try to implement. And then if I feel like doing an immersion event, like I just did on the weekend, I did a 3-day event where it was 8 in the morning till 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. It's immersion. You go for a specific reason and you practice experientially. That's important. But in my day-to-day life, I try to do micro-learning. Yeah. I find it really beneficial.
How interesting. I know there is something that we both sort of talk about in our respective fields, and that is that we think in question and answer, right?
Yeah.
I use that to drive all of my learning, in that I pretty much, just like people have their gratitude journals and have journals that they write in the morning and the evening, my morning and night are actually asking questions more than it is answering questions. So I do the standard, what are you grateful for? What went well today? What are you going to do differently tomorrow? But I mostly pose questions to myself that direct my next steps. So as opposed to answering a question, it's maybe a topic came up that I'm not familiar with. So I will ask a question about it, like, what is an NFT, for example, when the first time I heard about it. And then that sent me down, or that started to send me down that rabbit hole of learning about what that is. Or if someone says a term that I'm not familiar with, or if maybe my question is, how can I do this specific thing better? Or how has this changed since I was in high school? That's a big question I ask, because I work with students and I work with schools and teachers. Sometimes the question that I'm asking myself is, how has the classroom format changed since I was in school? Now, those questions alone are not the be all and end all, but it starts my learning journey, because when you go in with a question, the information you're learning has a purpose and a context, rather than just going in blindly reading about things.
Yeah, I think Tony Robbins also says the quality of your life comes down to the quality of your questions.
Yep.
And when I was younger than I am today, because I'm so old now, some of the questions were things like, why am I not good enough?
Yeah.
And your brain is a search engine. So it just goes, here's all the list of things you did that why you're not good enough.
It's going to try and answer it.
It's going to answer it, right? So then if you learn to ask a more actionable and helpful question, like, how can I achieve this thing? Or how can I get over this hump?
How can I be better at X?
How can I be better at X? And you start to open your mindset to, actually, everything I want is on the other side of a question. Great. Yep. I need to get better at asking questions. Yeah. But I don't think a lot of people realize that, like you said it just before as an offhanded comment, whereas the brain thinks in question answer. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people realize how important that is.
Yep.
Like if I say the brain thinks in question answer, somebody listening will be like, does it?
You just answered the question.
And there's your answer. So whenever we're teaching and explaining things, whenever I say a statement, I try to back it up with an answer to a question that I've just opened in your head.
Yeah.
So for example, if I were to say, in order to get rid of anxiety, you need to be able to learn to manage your emotional state.
Yeah.
And now they've got a question in their head of what is their emotional state? Now I need to go on to your emotional state is how you're sitting. Yeah. It's what you're focused on to physiology. Have you ever had the experience where you have anxiety? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yeah.
Well, that's because you don't know how to manage your state. Now I'm answering the questions that I'm opening for you. And when you start to do that as a speaker, you're taking people down the hole with you. Yeah. And you're taking them on a journey rather than just hopping up and being like, here's all the things you need to do today.
Yeah.
And people are like, why?
You know what? I'm even more on the nose as a presenter. I mean, you would know this because we've presented so many things together, but my title and transition slides are actually questions, and it's the question that I know they're asking next.
Exactly.
Right? So, for example, I do a section in our Ultimate Speaker Mastery workshop about different communication styles for depending on who you have in the room. And, the first one is, what personality type are you? What does this mean? And then eventually the crowd will be asking questions like, what if you don't know who is in the room? But before they get the opportunity to say that, I click next and that question is up on the slide. What if you don't know who is in the room? Or whatever question that I believe is coming next for them, I actually put it in bold writing on the slide as my transition. And this is for a few reasons that people underestimate. When you are using slides, there are two types of presenters. Either you are the authority over the slides, or the slides have authority over you.
100%.
And when you are reading the slides or not knowing what's coming next, or the slides don't really align with what the room is looking for or the direction that you're going in, the slides are the ruler and you're just the person presenting them, right? But if you can learn to be predictive in nature with your presentation and actually predict the journey that the audience is going to go on by predicting what questions they are going to ask, you become more of an authority because they're thinking in the crowd, how did she know that I had that question? How did they know that's where I was going next? And you're leading them on this journey.
Or something.
Yeah, it makes you seem like an expert. So most people do it subtly, and the way that you we're talking about is that you're answering their questions that you know that they're having subconsciously. I'm more on the nose. I'm like, here is the question that you're asking in big, bold letters, capital on the slide. And I think that is one of the reasons the feedback that I get is that my slides are informative and easy to follow because I hold their hand and literally take them down that rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's very similar. It's the same thing. It's almost like I'm asking you to ask the question so that I can answer the question that I gave you almost. Yeah. It sounds so like manipulative actually when you speak it out loud, but the entire intention is to help people to get better at speaking, right? And if you don't do that sort of thing.
Replace the word manipulative with persuasive. Right? Because speaking is persuasion. Sales are persuasion. And every conversation that you're having is a conversation of persuasion and or sales. When people say I'm not in sales or I don't do sales, like everything you're doing is a sale.
Yeah. Like have you ever tried to convince your kid to go to bed or...
That's a sale. You're selling them bed.
Yeah.
Right? But one of my kind of philosophies is that if you stop thinking of sales as sales, which has this dirty connotation, snake oil, car salesman, etc.
Serving.
Typically, people transition it to think about how you can offer a solution to people and how you can be, the solution to their problem, which is also good. But the way I have to think about it to help me make sales is how do I give this person all the information they need to make a decision, right? In the way that they need it to make that decision. So I know what decision I would like them to make, but at the end of the day, the decision they make is irrelevant as long as they make one. So they're not wasting my time. Either they're a yes, I want to buy, no, I don't, or yes, I'll buy later, right? Or no, talk to me next year or whatever it might be. But in order for them to reach that decision, I need to give them all the information they need in the format that they need it to make that decision. And that's why I dive into these DISC profiles, typically in our presentations, and I won't bore everyone with it too much.
I love the DISC profiles
today. Yeah, but right. So obviously, in short, you've got your 4 personality types. They all require a different type of sales conversation. They all require a different type of follow-up conversation. But in my mind, I'm not thinking I want to make this sale. I'm thinking that I want to get them closer to making a decision. What do they need to make that decision? So that's really helped me navigate sales because all it is a decision. And typically people don't need more time to make a decision. They need more information.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So you need to give them the information that they're looking for in the format that they're looking for it in, whether that is hearing it from someone else, hearing it from you, watching a video, getting reports or data. That all depends on who they are. And obviously in my coaching, I kind of deep dive into going, how do I know what information that particular person needs so I can deliver it to them? But sales is not about selling something, and it is about finding a solution for someone, but more importantly, it's about helping them make their decision.
Yeah, I heard about it more as you're helping alleviate somebody from a place of pain.
Yeah.
It's all the same thing, different terminology, just
Which
different
I think
perspectives
is
are the same.
True in a lot of ways. I would argue that up to 90% of the products and services available today are completely unnecessary and irrelevant and not actually serving pain as much as they are feeding into people's need for instant gratification.
100%.
Now, while the need for instant gratification in theory is a pain point, it's not a pain point I'm interested in serving. So this becomes that's
a good point. I think
place,
for
right?
the industry that we're in, it's
Correct.
generally to help people in a place of pain.
We're helping people, right? And we're still, you're not the best coach for every person.
100%.
I'm not the best trainer for every person, right? So at the end of the day, a conversation is not a sale. You're not intending to, you may not be the person that alleviates their pain point, but what you are doing is helping them to decide if you're the person that is alleviating their pain point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Because you might not be that person. So if you might be able to help them, but you might not be the help they want or need. Right? And which is really hard as kind of trainers and coaches, because we know we can help, right? But we might not be the help that they're looking for. And at the end of the day, unless they want it and unless they know they need it, it doesn't work. So instead of offering yourself as the solution, offer the information they need to decide whether you are the solution.
I guess that's also when you were teaching me last year, the start of a conversation for a strategy call. It's like, this conversation could end in one or two ways. Firstly, we find we are a good fit, or secondly, we're not. And in which case, I will help you to move you on to somebody who might be able to help. And It's like, yeah, absolutely. When you first start coaching, I think I can help the world.
Yeah.
Just trust me.
I can help everyone. Just give me your money and I will help you.
Yeah.
Until you realize that, even though that may be the case in some areas and in some ways, like they have to know or they have to think or they have to want your help for it to work. So yeah, I found that reframing it in my mind as, yes, potentially offering the solution to a problem, but when I'm coaching people who might be in luxury items or recreational services, they're not always curing a pain point outside of instant gratification. So I had to reframe it in a way that works for me and my clients. And that is, you're helping them make a decision. You're helping them decide why they should buy your handbag, not someone else's handbag. You're helping them decide why they should do this activity, not that activity. I'm helping them decide whether I'm the best trainer to help their specific problem based on my format, based on the transformation that I've helped people see, based on how we get along even as humans, which I think the human element of business is really something people overlook, but it's potentially the most important part.
I mean, you're always dealing with people, so...
People buy people, they don't buy services. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, and this is some stuff that you go really deep into in our workshops, which I really, really like. So Dianna's a lot more into the communication side, the actual nitty-gritty of what to say and when to say it, that sort of thing. Yeah. I'm more of what am I more of?
No, the way I think about it is you are the how to show up, how to say things, how to present yourself as an expert, how to work the stage, how to memorize what it is that you need to say. But I'm more in the back end. I've always been more of a behind the scenes person. I am what to say and how to structure your speech and how to how to spread out the information and how to position the information in certain ways. But once you have that information, you can't just get up on stage and read it or throw it at someone. You are how do I take this information and actually present it to the world? So
that makes more sense.
Yeah, and I think it's the same in our business endeavors together as well. I'm more of the structure person that has to rein you in and go have to structure this and process this in some way, and optimize it and operationalize it, and that's my strength, and that's why we work well together, because you are the person that works best at putting it out to the world and attracting people to it. So
I'm the excitable little golden retriever. I'm like, we could do these things. Let's go. All right, sweet. And we could also do that and this and that and this and this and that.
So no, I think that's why our skill sets kind of complement each other really well, particularly in the Ultimate Speaker Mastery. I think that's probably the feedback we get most often, that our skill sets do complement each other. I think that's why we make such an awesome team.
Yeah, I love it. I'd love to bring you into the forefront rather than keeping you in the background. I'm pushing it again on these podcasts and push out of reels and everything nowadays. So.
I'm trying. You can see my nervous hand gestures. I've got my playing with my hands and stuff. Like, I don't mind talking, and I'm happy to have conversations, and I can work a stage quite often, but knowing that I'm on camera and knowing that it still gets to me a little bit.
Those inanimate objects.
Yeah, damn.
So in the comments, someone should write how awesome she is. Everybody, thank you. So that she can start doing more of these. That's awesome. Well, we just got the timing thing, so we're going to have to wrap this up. But Dianna, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been amazing having you here and amazing learning from you. There's so many nuggets that you speak about just offhandedly because you've gone through these processes and recognizing for yourself, and there's a lot of wisdom and insights that you share, so thank you very much for that. And I hope some people got some really cool stuff from this episode. I'm sure that you will have. I'm sure that I have. And get ready, because Dianna and I are launching some pretty cool stuff coming up very, very soon. And if you are interested to attend these workshops where you're going to be learning how to become an awesome, confident speaker, how to deliver a message that makes an impact, and how to get paid really well by doing it, then make sure to hit us up and come along to those workshops. You're not going to regret it, and we'll see you there. Thank you so much. Peace out. Thanks, Dianna.
Thank you so much. Peace out.
Peace.